Books, books. I like books. I'm gonna read them all. Hi readers, Chris here. Welcome to my channel where I review fantasy, Stephen King, and all sorts of books. Today I am super excited to be talking about Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, a very popular book, but I've just read it for the first time. Before I jump in, quick background check here. So this is only the third Sarah J. Maas book that I've ever read, which I know, shocking. But the first two books that I ever read from her are the Crescent City books. So House of Earth and Blood, I think it's called, House of Sky and Breath. Those were the first Sarah J. Maas books that I had ever read. And if you saw my review for those, you will know that I had some issues with those books. I will post the review for the first one somewhere up here, and I'll probably post the links for both videos in the description box below in case you're interested. But to summarize what my issues with the books were, I just felt that they weren't for me. Maybe it's because I'm older and I'm not hip anymore, but because the books had so much cursing, so much vulgarity, so much needless sex, the characters felt one note, I really didn't like it. So going into this book, my expectations were quite low because of my past experience. However, I am here to say that I actually like this book, and I'm going to tell you why. First, let's start with the world building. The plot of this book, for the most part, takes place in one location, and that is this royal palace, basically. For all intents and purposes, our main character is stuck there until she completes the task she needs to complete, so we don't really see much outside of the palace. And I think having this one location really helps keep the story contained. Again, this was another criticism of the Crescent City books. Crescent City is one of those fantasies that just like rockets information at you and you have to try and keep up. This book is much more slow and much more gradual. So as our main character starts to learn things about the world and discover things, we as the reader get to do that too. And I personally much prefer that experience. I much prefer the experience of being an outsider and then getting to learn as the characters learn. When you have to figure out everything on your own very quickly, I can do that, but it can be a little bit jarring sometimes. So long story short here, I really enjoyed the world building of this world, the gradual introduction to it, because there's a lot of things here and there's a lot of things to explore. And I could tell in this book, like I know that this book is just one of a very long series. And I could tell, even just reading this book that takes place in one location, that there is so much more out there, that there is so much more to the world. Like there's other cities that are mentioned, there's like other dimensions that are mentioned. Like there's a lot in here, and I feel like it just has this potential, and you can really feel that in the world building, that there is a greater world out there, and you're gonna get to explore it if you keep reading the series, which I think is pretty cool. Now let's talk about our characters, starting with our main protagonist, Selena. Selena is our main character. She's the one that we follow throughout the story, and in the very beginning of the story, she is in prison. Even though she's very young, I believe she is described as being about 18. She is like the most famous assassin in the world, but something happened and now she's been in prison, but she gets a chance to get out of prison and possibly win her freedom if she becomes the king's champion, blah, blah, blah. I'll talk more about that in the plot. All I want to say here is that I really liked Selena, especially when I compare her to some of Sarah J. Maas's other female characters. First of all, when she gets out of prison, she does act and behave like someone who has been in prison. So like, for example, because she's training for a tournament, you know, it's not like one of those Rocky training montages. Like they talk about, or I should say the author talks about, how after going for a run, she throws up because she's not in any physical condition to be taking place in these sort of activities. and she has to like rebuild her strength and herself through a very long process, and it doesn't just happen overnight. And something else that happens in this book that I will mention here quick, it only happens once, but I feel like this is something that is rarely mentioned, especially in fantasy, and that she has to deal with the things that a normal woman would have to deal with. So I'll say cramps, take from that what you will. But I thought that was a very interesting choice to include that specifically. And as a fellow woman, I appreciate that because she has to spend months of training. This is something she's going to have to deal with once a month. So I appreciate that at least the book mentions that. And it's only mentioned very, very briefly and very, and not in any sort of vulgar way. So I think it was handled appropriately here. So even though Celaena does struggle a little bit in the beginning, you can tell that she is also like a kick-ass warrior. Like, she is strong when she's at her full strength. Like, she is, even though she's an assassin, like, she still has a good heart, which sometimes that can come off as corny because how can you be an assassin if you have a good heart? But she does, like, she does. Something happened to her in her past that was very traumatic, that caused her, you know, to go down this path in life. But, you know, she doesn't assassinate people frivolously. She does it with purpose. And I think that helps her, that helps make it so that you don't just see her as a killer, but you see her as a real person. So again, compared to some of the other Sarah J. Maas females, I liked her much better. I thought she was more relatable. I appreciated her struggles. I appreciate that she still seems like a good person. I appreciate that at times she goes out of her way to help others, and that she has good intentions. And I want to see her continue to be a kick-butt warrior in the rest of the series. So we'll see how that goes. One of my other favorite female characters is this character named Nehemia that Celaena meets when she gets to the royal palace. She is basically like a princess that's visiting from a foreign country, and the country that she comes from is kind of a little bit in upheaval. So the people that rule this country are kind of not well loved, and there's kind of a movement to take them out of power. And for all intents and purposes, Nehemia is basically like a rebel princess. Think like Princess Leia. Now, throughout the course of the story, you and through Celaena really kind of question who she is, what her motivations are, what she wants, because at times she seems like she wants to be Celaena's best friend, she wants to help her, but then some things happen in the plot that make her seem suspicious, so you don't really know. I found her character really fun. I found the mysterious of her really fun. I found the, oh, do you think she's, behind this thing, or do you think she's not? Do you think she's a spy? Do you think she's not? What does she really want? What's her motivations? I thought all of that was really fun and made her a fun character. And of course, I can't not talk about the two kind of main male characters. So the first one I'm going to talk about, and I know it says in the book that his name is pronounced Kayal, but when I was reading it in my head, I pronounced it Chol, which is totally different from Kayal. But anyway, he is like the captain of the guard, and he's basically the one that's responsible for Celaena while she is at the palace. So responsible for getting her to training, responsible for her well-being, responsible for keeping her hidden when it needs to be from the rest of the palace. And he is like one of those like kind of a little quiet, like kind of rough and tough, a little, stubborn, kind of gruff guard type characters. He kind of is that like stereotypical character. But as the story goes on and has him and Celaena spend more time together, you get to know him more on a deeper level. And I really like the way that their relationship develops, because it's one of those ones that as it develops, you feel like it could go either way. It could go romantic or it could go friendship. And I think that's really fun to watch and really interesting, because they really don't make it clear at first which way it's going. And you kind of get to guess along the way and discover what happens. And I think that makes his character and his relationship with Celaena really, really interesting. But a character who you don't have to guess about in his relationship is Dorian, aka Prince Dorian. He is the prince of this palace. So when Celaena and Dorian first meet, I don't want to say it's love at first sight. I'd say it's more lust at first sight. Like, I don't know, there's just something about Celaena, even though she's like a skinny, wimpy young girl that just got out of prison. He can see the fire in her eyes, and he's just captivated by her. And Celaena, I mean, she's not dumb. She's like any, I think, 18-year-old girl would be. If a handsome prince were giving you attention, she loves it. And again, as she gets to know Dorian on a personal level, I think she does start to catch feelings for him, like real feelings. Like, she's not just using him as like, you know, a toy. Like, she actually does care about him and think that he's a good person, which I do think he's a good person too. It's just, unfortunately, his father is the king, and the king may not be the best person. So that's the only big conflict between them. They do have a bit of a romantic relationship, but it's not like, it's not full on, because she is still an assassin and kind of a prisoner here, and he's the prince. So what's going to happen there? I don't know. We'll have to find out in another book. So now I'm going to talk about the plot. So even though this pretty much takes place in one location, I found the plot here really, really, really fun. Like, the plot starts out as a very small story. We have a girl, she's taken from prison and given a chance. Hey, you can be free if you compete in this tournament and become the king's champion. You only have to work for the king for a few years, and then we'll let you free. That is it. That's the whole story. Her training for the tournament, taking place in the tournament, and then the results of the tournament. That's what this whole book is about. Or at least that's how it starts. But as the plot goes along and Celaena spends more time in the palace, all of these things start to kind of happen around her. So there's other characters that start to get involved in the plot, like Dorian, like Nehemia. There's some other ones too. There's other characters that are also fighting to be the king's champion, and some of them are not benevolent, we'll say. So that starts to happen. And then Celaena also starts to like find secrets in the actual palace itself. Secrets where there's like hidden symbols and secret swords and dead queens that she can talk to and creatures, and like this world starts very small and the plot starts very small. But as the story continues, it grows and grows and grows and grows. The best way that I can explain it is like, if you've ever read Percy Jackson in the Olympians, like Percy doesn't know in the beginning of the book that he's a demigod, and then he has to go to the school, and then from there it kind of builds into this big story. And that's very much what happens here. Celaena goes into the palace, you know, it's a pretty straight line story, and then all these things start happening, and it just starts and builds and builds and builds. By the time you get to the end of the story, everything has exploded. Like I mentioned in the world building, you can tell that there is so much more to be explored here, so much more to happen. And honestly, I'm really excited to read the next book. I want to know what happens. I really liked Celaena and I got invested in her journey, and now I want to know what happens to her. So yeah, I am completely surprised at how much I enjoyed this book. Completely surprised. Because, like I said, having read the Crescent City books, those I was not exactly impressed with, so I had very low expectations coming in here, and those expectations were very much far exceeded. If you don't like Sarah J. Maas's other books, but you haven't read Throne of Glass yet, Jack says, give Throne of Glass a try. It is much more of a standard YA story. So there's not the cursing. I think there's like maybe 1 or 2 curses in there, but they're very appropriately placed for like very specific purposes. not at all like Crescent City. There is not the vulgarity, even the romantic scenes. There's like maybe some kissing and some light petting. That's about it, which is nice because that was way too much in the Crescent City books. Although Jack says he would like some heavy petting right now himself, so okay, Jack, I will pet you, I promise, once this video is over. I have been rambling long enough. I really liked Throne of Glass. Maybe I've convinced you to read it. If you don't want to, completely understand that as well. So now I want to know from you, have you read Throne of Glass? Have you read any of Sarah J. Maas's other books? Would you consider reading Throne of Glass? What do you like about it? What don't you like? Leave all your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel and come back soon for more bookish videos. All right, everyone, happy reading.